Hey there, Sarah Jo here with a quick tutorial on how to stitch in the ditch. Stitching in the ditch is basically just stitching in a seam line to create an invisible line of stitching. You only need a few supplies, including the project you're working on. A lot of times this stitch is used on bindings, facings, and waistbands. Thread. I'm using contrasting thread so you can see where I sew, but it's always best to use the same color of thread as your fabric. A sewing machine, pins, and scissors. When I'm stitching in the ditch, I like to have the inside edge finished either using a serger or a zigzag stitch. In this case, I'm using a zigzag stitch because it was quick and I didn't want to have to rethread my serger. This just makes the inside look cleaner after you've stitched over it. I typically use a similar color of thread, but I'm using pink so it's more visible in the tutorial. Make sure the seam allowance you're encasing is pressed towards the binding or the waistband. Fold the waistband or binding towards the wrong side of the fabric so the wrong sides are together. Pin the fabric in place on the right side of the fabric, and I like to put my pins parallel to the seam line. It just seems to hold the fabric in place better. Make sure the pins go through the seam and through the layer of fabric you'll be stitching down. When sewing, make sure the head of the pin is facing towards you. This makes sewing smoother since you can pull the pin out easily. Sew with the right side up, making sure the stitching stays along the seam line. This is a great time to sew slowly to ensure the back of the waistband or the binding gets stitched to the garment. I tend to backstitch at the beginning and the end to make sure the seam doesn't come undone. After sewing, trim any remaining threads. You can still see the stitching lines since I used a contrasting thread color. On this example though, you can't see the line of stitching from the outside of the garment, and the waistband is held securely in place. And that's how you stitch in the ditch.